So today for graphing sine and cosine, we're going to put everything together. Yesterday we talked a little bit about amplitude and period, and we're going to talk about those again today, but we're also going to talk about vertical and phase shifts today. So we talked about A being our amplitude, and it's half the height of the graph. So if we look at this one here, this blue one, our amplitude is 4, whereas our amplitude is 1 there. If it's negative, we talked about the graph reflects over the x-axis. So if we were to graph these, there isn't a period change. So again, we graph 4 marks on each side. So 2 pi, we got pi, pi over 2, and 3 pi over 2. And then our amplitude is 3 and negative 3. Well, sine starts in the middle, and then it goes up, down, middle, and then down, middle, up, middle. And then the next one, if we were going to graph negative half cosine x, once again, we're going to grab a period on each side. So we got 2 pi, pi, pi over 2, 3 pi over 2. So we could just mark half and negative half. Cosine normally starts high, but it's negative, so it starts low. So then it's got to go mid, high, mid, low. Mid, high, mid, low. And we have our cosine. So the next thing we're going to talk about is this vertical shift slash the midline. So this is, if you look, we have these numbers at the end, and that moves it up or down. So as you can see on this first line, plus 3, if I was to dash in, our midline is now at 3, where this one was negative 4. The midline, it was shifted down 4, and that middle of the graph is down 4. So when you graph this here, what is our new midline? Well, we can label this as negative 2, and our amplitude is 3. So if we go up 3, negative 2, negative 1, 0, so this would be at 1. And if we went down 3, this would be at negative 5. So again, it looks similar, but we're going to work on the labeling here. And again, there's no period change, so 2 pi, pi, pi over 2, 3 pi over 2. Sine starts in the middle, so it goes middle, high, middle, low, middle, low, middle, high, middle. So this next one, 4 cosine plus 1. So our midline is now 1. Our amplitude is 4, so this would be at 5. Down 4, that would be negative 3. 4 marks on each side again. So this is 2 pi, pi, pi over 2, 3 pi over 2. Cosine starts high, so it's going to start here. So as you can see, these all look alike, but it's really, are you labeling those axes? So the next thing we're going to look at today is your period and critical points. So your period we talked about yesterday was 2 pi over b, and you can find your critical points, those marks, by dividing it by 4. So this first one here, let's see, our amplitude is 3. Our period would be 2 pi divided by half. Well, that's really 2 pi times 2 over 1, so that's 4 pi. So if we were to graph this, our period, our fourth mark out, is now 4 pi. And we can see this one's easy, so this has to be pi, 2 pi, 3 pi, and 4 pi. Our amplitude is 3. It's a cosine, so cosine starts high, middle, low, middle, high. So we have that one there. So this next one here, amplitude is 2. Our period is 2 pi over 3. Well, if we divide that by 4, because once again we know it's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, 2 and negative 2, but we have to label these. That's the same as multiplying by 1/4, so 2 pi over 3 times 1/4. 2 pi over 12, which reduces down to pi over 6. So that's what we're counting by here. So this is 1 pi over 6, 2 pi over 6, or pi over 3, 3 pi over 6, 3 over 6 is pi over 2, 4 pi over 6, which is our 2 pi over 3. And sine starts in the middle, high, middle, low, middle, low, middle, high, middle. So the last one here, well, our amplitude is 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we have 1 and negative 1. Our period would be 2 pi over 2, which is pi. And to figure out what we're counting by, well, what's pi times 1/4? Pi over 4. So we have 1 pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, pi over 2, 3 pi over 4. Sine starts in the middle, so it goes middle, high, middle, low, middle. Continue that pattern on this side, and we have our sine curve. Alright, so the phase shift. Phase shift is C over B, and that tells us if we're going right or left. So if we look at this, our amplitude, we're going to put some stuff together here. Our amplitude is 2. Our period is 2 pi over 2, which is pi. Our phase shift, minus, so it's going to go to the right, C over B. So that's going to be to the right, pi over 2. So when we graph this, we have 2 and negative 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. And so this is pi. And let's see, if we multiply it times 1/4, pi over 4. So 1 pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, pi over 2, 3 pi over 4. So sine normally starts here, but we move to the right pi over 2. So to the right pi over 2 means it's actually starting here. So sine starts in the middle, and then it goes high, low, so again, it looks like a sine curve, except it's going down, but it's that shift there. So this next one, let's see, what is our amplitude? So our amplitude is 1. Our period, 2 pi over 1. So it's 2 pi. So this is an easy one to label. So we have pi, pi over 2, 3 pi over 2. And let's see, to the left, so our phase shift would be to the left pi over 2. So let's see, if we graph this, it's a cosine and it's negative. So it would start here, but it's going to the left pi over 2. So it's going to the left 1 mark. So that means here. So then it would go high, middle, low, middle, high. So there's our cosine curve. So here's a couple more that we can take a look at. I'll let you guys try those and then start the podcast again and see what you come up with. Okay, so our amplitude is 2. Our period is 2 pi over 2, which is pi. And our phase shift, C over B, would be to the right pi over 2. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4 pi. This is a pretty easy one. So pi over 4, pi over 2, 3 pi over 4, 2, negative 2. Sine. Sine starts in the middle normally. But let's see. This one moved to the right pi over 2. So 1, 2. So it's going to start here. And it's negative, so it would go down. So we have our sine curve. And this last one, let's see. A equals 3. Period 2 pi divided by 1/2. So 2 pi times 2 over 1, which is 4 pi. So if we were to get ready to graph this, we got 3 and negative 3, 2, 3, 4, 4 pi. So we're counting by pi. That got a little messy there. Sorry about that. And this phase shift to the left, pi divided by 1/2. So pi times 2 over 1. So it's to the left 2 pi. So this is a cosine. So cosine normally would start here, to the left 2 pi. So that's 2 tick marks. So 1, 2. So then it's high, so those next ones have to be mid. And there's our cosine. So the last two we're going to look at are putting everything together. So our amplitude is 2. Our period, 2 pi over 2, which is pi. Our midline, our vertical shift is 1. Phase shift would be to the right pi over 2. And those critical points, pi times 1/4, is every pi over 4. So if we were to graph this, our midline is 1, our amplitude is 2, so that would make this 3 and negative 1. Our 4 tick marks, so our critical points 1 pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, so pi over 2, 3 pi over 4, and pi. And let's see, what was this line? Whoops. This was sine, a negative sign. So it normally starts here, but we moved to the right pi over 2. So that means we shift it to the right. It would go here, and it was negative, so then it would go down. So we have our graph. So the last one here, let's see, our amplitude is 3, period, 2 pi divided by 1/2, so 4 pi. Vertical shift up 1, phase shift pi over 2 divided by 1/2, so that'd be 2 pi divided by 2, which is pi. And critical points, 4 pi times 1/4, would just be pi. So we can quick graph this here. Our midline was 1. We're counting by pi. And let's see, I already forgot what was our amplitude was 3. So if our midline is 1, so that would make 4, negative 2. It was cosine. So cosine normally starts right here. But what is that shift that we said? Phase shift pi to the right. So it's going to start here. So it's got to go mid